Christmas morning usually arrives quietly. In villages across Nigeria, roosters crow before dawn, candles flicker inside churches, and families whisper prayers for protection. But on December 25th, 2025, the sky over northwestern Nigeria told a different story. Far out in the Gulf of Guinea, an American Navy ship adjusted its position. Inside its steel belly, systems came alive. Coordinates were confirmed, targets locked. Then, without warning, more than a dozen Tomahawk cruise missiles tore through the darkness, slicing across hundreds of miles of ocean and land, racing toward two remote camps hidden in Sokoto State. By the time villagers felt the tremor, ISIS was already dying. This is the story of 8 reasons the United States decided that Christmas Day will become a battlefield. Reason 1. The church that never finished its prayer. The first reason began weeks earlier, inside a church that would never feel holy again. In Kwara State, worshippers had gathered for evening prayers at the Christ Apostolic Church. Hymns were still echoing when gunmen arrived. They didn't shout. They didn't negotiate. They opened fire. By the time the attackers vanished, chairs were overturned, walls were riddled with bullets, and blood stained the altar. Survivors spoke of screams that followed them into sleep. Photographs of the aftermath traveled fast, faster than the bodies could be buried. For years, attacks like this were labeled banditry. This time, American intelligence noticed something different. The attackers weren't random. They were ISIS. Reason 2, a pattern written in blood. The church attack was not isolated. Across northern Nigeria, reports piled up, villages burned, pastors executed, congregations wiped out during services. Intelligence analysts in Washington began overlaying maps, dates, and communications intercepts. What emerged was chilling. The violence followed religious lines. Messages recovered from extremist channels used new language: purification, cleansing, divine command. This wasn't chaos. It was ideology. For the first time in years, U.S. officials believed ISIS had shifted strategy. Faith itself was now the target. And once ideology replaces opportunism, violence escalates fast. Reason 3, the warning that was ignored. In November, President Trump issued a warning that barely made headlines. He ordered the Defense Department to prepare military options for Nigeria. Some dismissed it as political theater. Others assumed it would end in statements and sanctions. But inside the Pentagon, planners moved quietly. Satellite imagery was requested. Dossiers reopened. Names long buried in intelligence files resurfaced. By early December, ISIS camps in Nigeria were no longer just dots on a map. They were targets. And when ISIS continued killing, the warning expired. Reason 4, eyes in the sky never blinked. Long before the missiles flew, the sky was already occupied. High above Nigerian territory, American surveillance aircraft traced invisible circles. They watched fighters move between camps. They tracked trucks arriving at night and leaving before dawn. 2 locations stood out. Hidden in rugged terrain near the Nigeria-Niger border, the camp showed signs of coordination. Training schedules, weapon stockpiles, encrypted communications. Analysts believe these camps weren't defensive. They were planning something bigger. Christmas approached. The data became urgent. Reason 5, Nigeria's silent approval. Publicly, Nigeria rejected claims of religious genocide. Privately, officials were drowning. The country wasn't at war, yet more people were dying than in many war zones. Armed groups multiplied faster than soldiers could respond. Kidnappings funded militancy. Fear replaced trust. When American officials proposed precision strikes, not boots on the ground, Nigeria listened. There were no speeches, no flags raised together, just coordination and consent. Reason 6, ISIS was growing beyond Nigeria. The Sokoto camps weren't just Nigerian problems. Intercepted communications linked them to attacks across borders, into Niger, deeper into the Sahel, and along smuggling routes feeding West African extremism. ISIS wasn't hiding. It was expanding. To Washington, this was a familiar nightmare. They had seen what happened when ISIS was allowed to metastasize, first locally, then globally. Waiting was no longer an option. Reason 7, Christmas was chosen on purpose. The date, wasn't accidental. Christmas carries meaning, especially when faith is involved. By striking on December 25th, the United States sent a message sharper than any speech. There is no holy day for terrorists, no calendar that protects them, no symbolism they can weaponize without consequence. When the missile struck, it wasn't just metal hitting Earth. It was psychological warfare. Reason 8, the world needed to see it. Days earlier, U.S. forces had struck ISIS in Syria. Nigeria became proof that this wasn't regional policy. It was global intent. America wanted the world watching. ISIS wanted to project power. Only one could succeed: the silence after the fire. When dawn came to Sokoto State, the camps were gone. Charred earth replaced training grounds. Communications went dark. Fighters who had preached slaughter were buried under rubble. U.S. Africa Command confirmed what survivors already knew. Multiple ISIS terrorists were dead. No American soldiers set foot on Nigerian soil. No press conference followed immediately. Just silence. And somewhere, churches held Christmas services under watchful skies, scarred, grieving, but alive. The missiles were gone. The message remained. And in the quiet that followed, one truth lingered heavier than the smoke. The war had reached Nigeria, and Christmas would never sound the same again. If you want more untold stories where power, faith, and violence collide, stories the headlines only whisper about, stay with this channel. Some truths don't knock. They strike.